Hi, this is Involved Innovation YouTube channel. In this video, we will see about state management using Redux Toolkit. Before seeing about the state management or global state management, we will just cover what is state very briefly. State is an object that holds data or information about the component. Here, the component is a UI component and the data can change over time and it is used to render the UI dynamically based on the current values. For example, if I have a state and that state holds a flag which holds a boolean value, and based on that we can able to close or open the modal. The state is an object that holds the information, and based on this object information, values will be rendered in the UI. So each React component has its own internal state that is managed via useState. This is in the functional React world. Before functional world, there is a class-based React components. There also we use this .state. If the application is fairly simple, that means like if it has one or two components, then you can able to use useState without using any global state management. As soon as the complexity of the project increases, then we need to use global state management. Here we are using Redux. For the people who have used Redux like before 5 years, they might have found out that Redux has too much boilerplate code. You need to handle everything. By default, Redux is unopinionated. That means you can implement anything of your own choice, write lot of code even to achieve a basic stuff. That's what the Redux Toolkit simplifies. So it is written on top of Redux, so it can be able to simplify different things on the state. We will dive deep into that. So this is where the Redux Toolkit really shines. So for this, I have created a sample project. So this sample project has state managed with useState. So here with this project, we will cover what are the different problems we face without having a global state management when your project complexity increases. I have 3 branches in this repo. I have pasted the link of this repo in the description. Here without Redux base is the branch we will be first using. So this is where we don't have any Redux. This is only using useState. And then we are using prop drilling. I will cover what is prop drilling shortly. First I will clone this repo. To clone this repo, I will copy this and then open the folder. Here, open the command prompt and enter the command git clone -b. Now we have cloned this in this folder. Now go inside this book app and then open the Visual Studio Code here. Now I have opened the Visual Studio Code. You can open the terminal here and enter the command npm install. This will install all the dependencies required by this particular project. Once you have installed all the dependencies, enter the command npm start. This will start the application in the port 3000. This has a search component and an add button to open a modal, and this is a form where we can able to enter name, author, and here cover image, which adds a new book. And then we have 2 books pre-populated. This is coming from the JSON. Now we will see what this code does on a very high level. We have components and it starts from the app.tsx. Here in the app.tsx, creating 3 different use states. One is to store the book list and another one is to store the modal open or the modal close. So this is a boolean variable. And then we have the original book list. Because we have the search functionality, I want to store the original book list. For example, if I search data, then the book list will have only one. But as soon as the search is cleaned, I need to get all the data which is already there. So for that, I'm using original book list as a state. We will see how we are passing this, how we are achieving the prop drilling, and what is the problem with the prop drilling here. Now we saw we have app, and the app has 3 component references, that is navbar, book list, and book modal. Here the navbar has search book and add book components, and search book is used to search. That's where we have our text box to search, and add book is to add the book, and then we have the modal. If you set that flag value to true, then it will open the modal. So you need the original book list function in the search book and then set book list in the search book. and then you need set modal open in the add book, and then you need BookList in the BookList component, and you need set original BookList, set BookList, and set modal open and modal open in the add book modal component. Now, even though we don't record anything in the navbar, we need to pass in everything to this navbar. Since the navbar is hosting both search book and add book, these three dependencies which is required by this child component for this navbar needs these three, so we need to pass in. So this is what the prop drilling is. Now consider if this tree looks like 5 or 6 levels, and if you require only this book list at the 7th level, even though it doesn't record in all the above levels, you need to still pass it like how we are doing. This is the main problem without having global state management. And here we also need to filter out the values before persisting that to the state. For example, whenever I add a new book, this function adds or validates something whenever a new book added. In this case, it might need to add a new ID based on the number of books already present in the book list array object. And we might also have the filter books filtering the values in the book list. We need to make sure the conditions are met. For example, if the query is empty, then we need to use the original values in the original book list to the book list. You need a state that need to be persisted at the global level, and you need functions which acts as a filters before even persisting that to the state. And then you need a mechanism to send the value from this function to the state. Now this is where the Redux comes into the picture. First we have the UI. In the UI, I will be sending some event, so that can be any button click, or it can be drop down, or it can be any asynchronous event also. That goes to the event handler, and it identifies what kind of event it is, and it uses the dispatch. Dispatch is a method used to send an action to the Redux store. It tells the store to update the state based on the logic defined in the reducer. So we will cover what is reducer. Before that, action is a plain JavaScript object that describes what is the type, and then it also includes an optional payload. So this optional payload can be sent, and that data can be even persisted to the store. Reducers are pure functions that determine how the state should change in response to an object. They can take current state and action as an input and return a new state. So this reducers are nothing but the functions which we have used here. For example, the filter books, open AddModal, close AddModal, add book. These are all the function which we have utilized. So this function what does is it gets the data from the dispatch, and the data is coming from the action. So the action has the type and then payload, and it does some validations on the type if it record. Next we have store. The store is the centralized container in Redux, and it holds application state and allows state updates via dispatch, and lets app read the state via selectors. And here we have the middleware. Middleware are a function that intercepts actions before they reach the reducer, enabling additional logic like asynchronous call or logging. And then we have slice. Slice is a collection of Redux logic for a single feature for your application. Here in this case, I have two main things, that is the book list as one slice. I can store this book list and original book list in a single slice, and then I can store this open in a separate slice. So a slice is a collection of Redux logic for a single feature of your app. It includes a reducer, its initial state, and automatically generated action creators. And we have the selectors. Selectors are used by the UI components. We have other core functionalities like immutability. The Redux Toolkit, it uses immer. So immer is a library that is internally used by Redux Toolkit to allow mutative syntax in reducer while maintaining immutability. For example, here I have an object, and then this object I will be modifying this object name. For me it looks like I am directly modifying in this object, but what Redux Toolkit does is it creates a new copy, and then this is the immutability nature will be preserved. That means this is a separate object and this is a separate object. You can also come back to this explanation once you have seen the code. We will see this with the example as well. AsyncThunks. This is to handle asynchronous communication. For example, if you have API calls, this is where you can able to use AsyncThunks. And then Redux Toolkit also has Redux DevTools integration, and with that Redux DevTools integration you can able to see how the state changes and what are the different reducers being called, and then you can also able to send your own action, and with that action you can able to see how your state gets changed. Now we will see this with an example. I am clicking the button add book. Now we will see what happens in the dispatch, what happens in the reducer, what happens to the state, and how we are getting the value from the selector. When I click the button add button, the new event will be triggered, that is a button click event. So I have on click button event that I will have in our component function. I will have the dispatch. So in the dispatch I will have action, and this is a JSON object, and this has type as one of the property, and in the type we will have the string. I can also have a optional payload, but here in this case I don't need any optional payload. So this type will be sent to the reducer now, and now this action reaches the reducer. The action, the type is open AddModal. This triggers that particular reducer. So here I am just changing the state.open equal to false to state.open equal to true. Here you no need to worry about creating the new object. You can directly change the state.open equal to true. For us it looks like a mutative syntax, but internally Redux Toolkit uses immer to create the new state. Now we have changed the state.open, and this state.open now sent to the UI. The selector captures this particular state, and then we are opening up the modal. Now we will see another example by sending up optional payload. Now I am entering this value in the modal, which has name, author, year, and cover image as string, and then after that I am clicking add button. When I click the add button, the on click function will get triggered. In the on click function I am having this dispatch. Now I am triggering two different actions. One action with type add book to list, and here I am also sending the new book, and this dispatches another action that is close AddModal. So one with optional payload and one without payload. Now this particular action reaches the reducer. So based on this, it knows it need to trigger two different reducer here. One is add to list, and then another one is close AddModal. So the close AddModal changes the state.open to false, and then we are adding the new book to the book list. So whenever you add book, it checks the number of book already present in the book list, and then it increments the ID, and then it persists it to the state. Once this value gets persisted to the state, UI gets this value from the selector. Here in the UI, we can able to see the new book got added. We will go back to the code now. We will create the store.txt. So here I will create a new folder, and I will name it as state. And then here inside it, I will create a new store.txt. So this is where our store related things will be present. So if you go back to the diagram, you can able to see we have reducers, we have all those things. This is where everything will be present. And this all uses useState, and this doesn't have any global state management yet. Create a new terminal here, and in the new terminal, I will install the dependencies first. So for this, I need Redux Toolkit as one of the dependency and React Redux as another dependency. The React Redux as the core Redux components. After that, I'm gonna create a new store. So for that, I will create a new folder. This is where all our state related files will go. So I will name this folder as state. Here I will create a new file. I will name it as store.ts. And here I will create a state, that is export const store, and here we need to use configure store. So this configure store is coming from Redux Toolkit. In this configure store, we can able to define all our reducers. For now, I don't have any reducers because for that I need to create a slice. We will see what the slice is. So for now, I will give the default reducer, and then I will just create a dummy object in this reducer. Since we are using TypeScript, we need to get the root state, and then we also need to have the type for app dispatch. I will use this code to get the root state. So what we are doing is we are using return type of store.getState. That means it gets the store and then it gets the state. So whenever you load this particular store with the state, we will get all this in the root state type so that we can able to use this. Similarly, we are using store.dispatch, and the store.dispatch type is what the app dispatch gives. We don't really declared any dispatch here. We haven't really declared any state here. We have just declared the reducer. This all done by the Redux Toolkit internally. I will create a new folder. I will name this as slice. New folder inside the state, and for now I will create a slice for the AddModal. I will name this slice as AddModal slice.ts. So for a slice, we need to give the slice a name, and then we need to give the slice an initial state, and then you also need to define the reducers. So for that, first I will create the interface. This is for the TypeScript. So interface, and I will name this as AddModal state, and this holds open, and this open is of type boolean, and we will create an initial state, const initial state, and this is of the type AddModal state, and then initially this value is false. Now we will create the slice. I will declare const AddModal slice, and I will use createSlice. The createSlice is coming from the Redux Toolkit, and inside that, first I will give the name. I will name it as AddModal. Then I will use initial state. So initial state I have already created. So in the line number 8 to 10 we have created the initial state, and then we will define the reducers. So the reducers is an object. We need to create two different functions. If you go back to the diagram, we have two different reducer functions. One to open the model, where we are setting the state.open to false, and then another function close AddModal. I will create the first reducer. I will name it as open AddModal, and this takes in state, and also this takes in an optional payload. Here in this case, I don't need a payload, I just need the state. This is where we are talking about the mutating syntax. So I will just simply give state.open equal to true. This may look like I'm not creating a new state object. It looks like I'm directly modifying the state object, and I'm just directly changing the state.open to true, so it won't create a new object. But what the Redux Toolkit does by default is it creates the new state, so it all abstracted from us. We don't need to really worry about. We can directly consider the state.open equivalent to true, changes the value, and also it creates a new state. Immutability of the state will be maintained even though it looks like we are directly changing the value of open in this particular state. Similarly, I will create another function. This is close AddModal, and this also doesn't really require any payload, so I will be using just the state.open equal to false. Now we have defined our two reducers. Now we will export the reducer. Export default AddModal slice dot reducer. Now this is one thing which you might get really confused. Here the name is reducers, and here I am just giving it as reducer. So where this reducer comes from? So this reducer comes from createSlice. So if you go back to the createSlice function, here you can able to see it has reducer. So this is what we are using. So by default, this all things are coming along with the createSlice. So now we have created a complete state for this AddModal, and here we have just created only one createSlice function that created us the reducers, that created us all the actions required. So we can able to also export the actions from this. Export constant equivalent to AddModal slice dot actions. So now this has two actions. One is open AddModal as one of the action, close AddModal as another action. These actions we are not deliberately defining here. This also comes from the createSlice. Now we will also create a helper function that takes the value open from the state. So we can create a constant which holds that function. So const open modal flag. This takes in state, and this state is of type root state. So this is coming from the store.txt state.AddModal.open. We need to get this root state from the store. Now we have this root state from the store, and we can able to see this is coming from state AddModal.open. Now go to the store. Now here we need to create a reducer. This is AddModal. This takes in the slice. Here we need to use our AddModal slice. So this AddModal slice, by default it gives us the reducer, because if you see, this is what we have exported by default. So export default AddModal slice dot reducer, and this reducer we are using it in the store. So now we are completely done with creating the store. So now we need to wrap our index.txx with provider. Use provider, and this is coming directly from React Redux, and here you need to have store, and then you need to pass the store, and this is coming from your state.store. So this is what we have used here. We have exported the store here. We are passing this in the provider. We need to wrap all the components with this provider. Now we can able to use this state in any of the components in the app. This is applicable to all the child components. I will remove this modal open. So now when I remove this modal open, I will get error here. First I will start with the navbar. I no longer need to send this set modal open. In the navbar, I have this set modal open. I can remove this. I don't need that. I don't need that as well. And here I can remove the set modal open. So now this is what the prop drilling is. Here we are not really using this add modal open before also, but we are getting this in the property just because add book component needs it. So now go back to the add book, and here I will remove it. No longer this takes any property, and then here I can give props. Here we need to define the dispatch. The dispatch sends the action to the reducer. We will use the useDispatch hook. The useDispatch hook is coming from React Redux. This is of the type app_dispatch. This is what we have created in the store. I have created a variable here, and this variable name is dispatch. Now instead of set modal open, I need to call the dispatch function here, dispatch. And inside that I need to use the specific. So if we go back to AddModal slice, I have two actions. Open AddModal, that is one of the action, and close AddModal, that is another action. So here this dispatch, I need to call the open AddModal action. This is a function, so I'm using open and close brace here. Now we are done with the add book. Now we'll go back to the app.tsx. So here we are also sending the state, and then we are also sending in the function. Now we will remove both this from add book modal, and we will go inside the add book modal here, and then we will remove the set open modal and then modal open here, and then we will remove both this from the property list as well. We need to first create the dispatch that we have already created. Const dispatch equal to use dispatch, and this is of type app dispatch. Now we have created a dispatch. Now we need to use a selector to get the value from the state. So for that we will use the useSelector hook. So useSelector, this is coming from the Redux and useSelector, and here we need to pass in the function. We already created this function, that is open modal flag. So what we are doing here is, if we go back to the AddModal slice, so this is the function. So this takes in state, and then here we are just getting the open from AddModal. Here we are passing in that, and then we will be storing this in the variable here, const, and this is open modal, and this open modal variable is of type boolean. Instead of set modal open, I can send dispatch, and inside dispatch I can send close AddModal, and then I need to give the open and close brace here to denote this as a function, and then here we no need to put it as modal open. Instead of that, we can put it directly as open modal. This is the new variable name which we have created, and you will copy this dispatch function, and here instead of set modal open, so here also we need to just pass in close AddModal. So here the problem is this state is outside the source, so I need to just move this inside source, inside the folder. Now we have rendered, and now if you click add book, we can able to see the modal opens, and if I click the close here, the modal closes. So now when I click the add book function, this triggers the event, and that is handled by the event handler. So we have this on click function, and inside that on click function I am calling the dispatch, and inside the dispatch I am calling that particular action, that is open book modal, and then that reaches the reducer, that in turn changes the value in the state, and from there we are using that in the selector, and then we can able to render that in the UI. Here rendering means we are opening up this modal, and if I do the same here, if I do the close, all this happens and the state changes from true to false, the modal closes. Now we have achieved the modal open and closing in the Redux. Now we will do the same for the book list and original book list. So for that I will go inside the slice. So here I will create a new slice, and then I will name this as book list slice, and then this book list slice also takes in the book type. Type has ID, name, author, year, and cover, and then here I already created this data folder. Inside this data folder we have this JSON, and that JSON has book list, so this has two different values, and we will create another interface to define the book list state. So the book list state has two property. One is book list, which is of type book type array, and then original book list, this is book type array. So if you go back to the app.tsx, we have two different useState. One is book list and another one is original books list. So now we are trying to do the same in the book list state. So here I need to create the initial state. So const initial state, and this is of type book list state. I need two variables. One is book list, and that is coming from the book list JSON. And then next original book list. For this also I am declaring the initial book list. Now we have defined the initial state, and now we need to create the book list slice. So the const book list slice and equivalent to create slice. So this is where we will be creating new slice, and like how we have created in the AddModal, first thing is name, and this takes in name property. You can define the value here, book list, and then the initial state. Next is reducers. So here I need to create two different reducer. One add to book to list, and another one is filter books. First reducer name is add book list, and this book list takes state. Here the add book list also takes in the book type, the entire new object, action, payload, action, and this payload action is coming from the Redux Toolkit, and here inside that it takes in book type. First we will take the complete payload which is coming in action.payload, and then we will modify the payload coming in. We will add the ID. So the ID is number of objects already present in the array plus 1. Now we have created this new book, and now state dot book list dot push equivalent to new book. Paste this again, and here original book list. It creates the new object, even though this looks like we are directly altering the state book list. The Redux Toolkit takes care of it. We will be also creating another function. The function is filter books. The filter books also takes in the state, and also it takes in optional payload. So the optional payload here is of type string, and first we are validating action.payload is if it is invalid or if it is empty, then we are setting the book list to the original book list. If not, we are filtering out. We need to export the reducer. This we have already done, in the modal. We need to do the same here. Export default and then BookList slice dot reducer, and then we need to export two actions. This is also coming from the BookList slice. Add BookList and then filter books. Now we will create two different function constant to get the value from BookList and also to get the value from original BookList. We are getting error here because we haven't added the BookList in the store, and then here comma BookList slice. Now we have added. Go back to the BookList slice. They are gone. Now copy this again, and here instead of BookList, this is original BookList. Same, instead of BookList, this is original BookList. Now we will change the React components. Now we will remove both this. We don't really require this, and then we will remove this first from navbar and go to the navbar. Here we can remove both these properties, and here we are not really using these two things. We are just sending this to the child component, and we'll go back to here, and then we will remove the properties from this as well, because this is no longer coming from the properties, but we are using hooks to get the values. We need to use the dispatch hook. This is of type app dispatch. We can completely remove this. We have created a complete reducer which is to filter book, and inside that we will be using filter books. Here we need to pass the string, because we need to pass the payload as well. So here we are passing in the query app.tsx. You no longer has this book list, so remove this, save this app.tsx, and then here this is no longer record. You can just use this as props. Now remove from the type as well, and for this you need use selector, and here you need to get book list, and this is book list state. Here instead of book list, this is book list state. Now go back to the app.tsx again, and you need to pass this to AddModal, book model, and save this. No, you no longer need this as well, and then clean it up. Here we already have this dispatch. Here we can directly use this dispatch. Here set book list, we know record this all these conditions, because this all conditions are already moved to the reducer there. So we can just remove this, create a new book dispatch, and this is the action we need. Add book list. We need to pass in the new book, because this dispatch takes in the payload. Now we have completely done everything. Now go back to the code. Now go back to this and then refresh this, and then click add book, and here I will add another book. So now when I click add, what happens is it triggers. When I click this add book, this function will get triggered, and then it triggers two different dispatch. One is add book to list, that is one action, and add close model, that is another action. So now if I click this, then new data gets added to the book list, and also the modal closes. So both happens through two different dispatch. Now we can also try to search here. I will search designing. Once I put DES, then the third thing goes off. Once I remove everything, then this comes back. This is because this is what the logic we have implemented in the filter function. So far so good. We don't have any issues. These are all synchronous. So now we will see how to handle the asynchronous in Redux. For this example, I have created another API. You can find this link in the description. This has the array of codes, and then this is now running in the port 3001. There is a delay. I just simulated this delay, that is I'm using this 5000 milliseconds, which is 5 seconds delay. After that I'm getting a quote. Now we will modify this. We will load quote here. For that I will use asynchronous thunk. For this I also need the dependencies axio, because I need to query the another endpoint. npm install axios, save. Now we have install the Axios dependency. Go back to the slice folder. Here I need to create a new slice. I will name this as quoteSlice. And first I will start with the enum. So this enum is to define the status. This status can be idle, loading, succeeded, or failed. The quote response interface can have quote, that is the real code which is coming from the API, and then the code is of type string, and then status, and this status is of enum type which we have already defined, that is status, and then error. This error can be simply a string, or it can be null in some cases. Now we need to define the initial state. So initial state is of type quote response. The quote's initial value is empty string, and then status by default our initial value is idle, and then at the beginning there is no error, so we will be defining this as null. So we will be defining the createSlice first, quoteSlice, and then equivalent to createSlice. So the createSlice is coming from Redux Toolkit, and then I am providing this name as quotes, and then initial state, and then reducers. For this there is no reducers by default. No, since this is asynchronous, we can't really define our reducer inside this reducers. We need to define this in another property, that is extra reducer. We need to pass in our reducer here. This extra reducer is a function, so it takes in builder as the value and then modifies the state. Even though we don't require reducer here, we need to have the reducer. If we don't have the reducer, then we will get error, so we will be having a empty object inside the reducer. Now we will create the AsyncThunk export. This we will export as well. Export constant fetch quote, and then create AsyncThunk. This takes 3, that is the first one is string. This says what the return type we are getting. There is 3 return type. One is fulfilled, or error, or loading. So we will be having that here, and we will be having void. This is the thunk argument type. Since the argument type is void, we are defining this as void. Last one is the rejected value. Rejected value is whenever we get the error. So reject value is string. Quotes dot fetch quote. Redux Toolkit automatically appends the quotes or the name here, so we need to do the same here as well. Quotes fetch quote comma async, and then the first one is empty, and then second one is thunk API, and here we will have the try calling the API response equivalent to await Axios dot get. This is the get endpoint, and then http localhost 3001 quote, and return the response dot data dot quote. Why we are using response dot data dot quote? If you go back to the API, you can able to see it's coming in the quote, so that's why response dot data dot quote, and catch, and here we will be catching any error. So error here, error is of any type, and then return the API dot reject with value error dot message. This function we will be passing into the extra reducer. So in the extra reducers, we need to create 3 different builder cases. So that is what happens this asynchronous function when it fails, or when it loads, or when it succeeds. First we will start with the pending condition builder dot add case, and then it takes in fetch quote dot. So the fetch quote is coming from here. Since this uses createAsyncThunk, by default this has 3 different values, that is pending. This particular case will be triggered when we are waiting for a response. So this takes state, and then state dot status equivalent to status dot loading, and state dot error equivalent to null, because when it is loading, this is not considered as a error. and here instead of pending, this is fulfilled. The fulfilled means it succeeded. So here status is succeeded, and then here we no need to populate anything in the error. We need to populate the quote, and this is coming from action.payload. We have the action, and this is of type payload action, and this is of type string. Perfect. No, here this is not quote, this is error, this is rejected, and so once it is rejected, we can have string, and then this can be also of undefined type, and here the state.error equal to action.payload, something went wrong, and here this is not succeeded, this is failed. And then we will be exposing the reducer. So expose to reducer, export default quoteSlice dot reducer. Go back to store. Here add another slice. We will be using the quote state export const quote state equivalent to state root state, and then state dot quote. So this root state is coming from the store. We will create a new quote.tsx. I already created this quote.tsx. I will explain what is happening here. We already here use dispatch. I am calling this inside the use effect hook based on the status. If it is loading, succeeded, or failed, we are showing three different things. Save this. We need the code.css. You can get all this from the repo, the link of which I have provided in the description. And then go back to the new bar.tsx. We can add another button. So this button is to get the new quote. On click of this, we need to call the dispatch. First, I will define the dispatch here. Const dispatch equivalent to use dispatch, and this is of app dispatch type, and then open and the close brace. So for looking fine, here dispatch, and inside that I need to pass fetch quote, and go back to the newbar.css, add this style here, and now go to app.tsx. Now we can reference the quote here. We no longer record this, and we no longer record the useState because we completely removed that as well. So no, there is no issue. Go back to the application. Now refresh this. Now if you refresh this, you can able to see it is in loading status, and after 5 seconds we can able to get a new quote. If I click the fetch new quote, once I click the fetch new quote, I can able to see after 5 seconds we are getting a new quote. And in the meantime, we are getting loading. This is because if we go back to the quote, we are loading the loading 3 dots here. We have seen the synchronous and asynchronous now. Now we will just cover a base example for a middleware. So here in the store, I will define a custom middleware, const custom middleware, and here this takes in store, and then next action, and then return action here, and for now just I will give any type here, and then I'm just using console.log, and I'm just printing this action here. And now below reducer we can define our middleware, and here we can pass in get default middleware, and then dot concat custom middleware. If I go back to the application and inspect, go to console, clear the console. If I click add book, I can able to see this is now coming from store TS7. This is where we are printing out the log. All this action which reaches the store or which reaches the reducer, we can able to intercept with the help of this middleware. Now we will see about another important thing, that is using Redux DevTools, and this is one of the capability comes with Redux, and for this I'm using Chrome extension. I already installed this. Once you have installed, and you can able to see that in the extension. So this is my extensions. The extension list, I can able see the Redux dev tool, and then here I can able see everything. Now click inspect, click Redux. Now we can able see the initial state. So during the initial load, AddModal open is false, and then by default it has 2 in the book list and the original book list, and the quote is empty, and then the status is 0, that is representing idle. It triggers fetch quote, it is in the pending status, and still open is false. After that we got the value, the quote, and it is succeeded. That's why the status is 2 here, and the error is null. And now you can able to also hover over to see what happens at each and every time. This is what you can able to see in the state, and in the difference gives a different state. This is very handy if you want to debug. That is, during this time the status gets changed from 0 to 1. That is, we started the API call, so from idle it gets changed to pending. That's why the status is from 0 to 1, and once it is succeeded, changes the quote, and then the status from pending it changes to succeeded, and the quote from empty string it's changed to the real quote. We can able to see also the trace, and then we can able to also see which actions get triggered. You can see here during this time this action gets triggered, this time this action gets triggered. Now if I click add book, I can able to see this action gets triggered, that is AddModal, and then open AddModal. In the reducer, by default this takes the name, the AddModal is the name. Here we have provided AddModal followed by name, here whatever we provided, so that is AddModal / open AddModal. In case of quoteSlice, you can able to see, since we are not using this in the reducer, we are using extra reducer, we are defining quotes / fetch quotes here. So if I close this here, now the close AddModal action got triggered, and the difference is from true it changed to false. We can able to see 2 buttons here, that is hide slider, it hides the slider, and then you can also send your own action here. So for example, if I want to debug, I can just directly send the type here AddModal / open AddModal. So now if I dispatch this, now I haven't triggered anything in the UI. I am doing everything through the Redux dev tools. I can able to see the model open. Here I can able to also close by sending that particular action. If I trigger that, then this model closed. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a lot regarding the Redux. For more videos on the front end, software engineering, Redux, React, follow this channel, subscribe to this channel for more videos, and share it with your friends if you like this video. Thank you.